Well, welcome to our first episode of our podcast, Supporting Leaders. In today's first episode, we are really fortunate to have a very special guest with us today. We have Jack Spencer, who has been a State Farm agent for 38 years. His office consistently performs within the top 1% of 19,000 agents in State Farm. From a State Farm perspective, his office has earned top recognition in a lot of things. One of the high level achievements that State Farm recognizes is outstanding life insurance production through a program called Ambassador Travel, and his office has been a 37-time Ambassador member. From an industry standpoint, Jack has earned recognition by earning Millionaire Roundtable Achievement numerous times. About 1% of the licensed agents achieve this. The other special thing about my guest is that Jack is actually my dad. And so as I have ventured into my journey in educational leadership, there is a lot that I have learned from my dad. And I don't know if I've told you this, Dad, but one of the things I think, even just working in your office a little bit here and there was, it was never about, while your job is a sales job, to me, what I witnessed, it was never really about sales. It was about building relationships. And, that's something that I think has really served me well in my journey into leadership, especially within education. But, when you met with people, it was, you knew those people and you took time to get to know their stories. And, that's a lesson I'm forever grateful for. So we're excited to have you on the show as our first guest and ready to rock and roll and chat with you about leadership.
Well, terrific, Dr. Hartman. So for those who don't know, my daughter has a doctorate's degree in leadership. So there's always those things that bind fathers and daughters. And for Lisa and I, one of the big binding things has been over the years, our time we've spent sharing our leadership experience. She has gone off into leadership, into education. I have been in leadership and business ownership. And that has brought, I think, both of us a lot of joy and to visit with each other about how we see leadership. And, we see it often the same and sometimes a little bit different. But I look forward to this, Lisa. This will be fun because it's brought us a lot of enjoyment, brought us together to be able to talk about leadership, how we see it. So thank you for doing this. I'll tell you, today more than ever, we need leaders, and we're going to dive into that a little bit. So this is a well-timed blog you're doing, and I look forward to the next part of this interview.
Yeah, so I feel like you could be like a recurring guest because there's so many things, especially with your experience for 38 years, that I feel like we could dive into and talk quite a bit about. But one of the things I really want to ask you about is, so first tell us a little bit about like what did leadership look like when you first started as a State Farm agent 38 years ago, and then what's that transition been, and what does it look like here now? In year 38, and maybe talk to us too about, I happen to know that you have some staff who have been with you for a very long time. So what has that journey looked like? How has leadership changed, and what is leadership with, today's employees in 2021, I guess now, what does that look like and how is that different?
Yeah, I think depending on what you're doing in life, I think leadership can look a little different in terms of whether you're a State Farm agent or whether you're in education. For me, the transition has gone from playing to being a coach. When you start off a small business, you're actually out taking swings at the ball, shooting the ball. You're a player, and I had to. Interestingly, I had to lead myself and a small team. I was very fortunate to have my wife was one of my very first partners in my business, and she was a great partner. But eventually you hire a person, and so you learn on the go. You learn how to manage that one person. And owning a small business, leadership is kind of unique in that you're always learning on the go, and there's mistakes that are being made, and what's really important is that you're learning from the mistakes as opposed to continue to plow through and push on. And I think one of the great leadership things that's been learned in 38 years, Lisa, has been that you make mistakes, and it's how quick you recover from mistakes. I've watched, we've all witnessed leadership over the years, and to me, the really great leaders are the leaders who do a couple things really, really well. One, admit when they're wrong, and recover from that well. So I think that's one of the real big things, and it's one of the big things I've learned is that there's mistakes, and then seeking advice or seeking input from other people. Gosh, I have been so fortunate to have been surrounded over the years by good State Farm leadership people, customers, employees. So that has been a big lesson as to where do you get advice, and to be open to advice, and to admit when you're wrong, and to move forward. Tiger Woods talks about golfing, and he says that one of the big things for professional golfers is that every professional golfer will lose their swing somewhere during an 18-hole tournament. Every round, he says, every round they will lose their swing. And he says what separates good golfers and great golfers is how quick you recover. Within every round, you're going to err, you're going to slip, you're going to have something go wrong. How quickly can you find your swing again? And that has been, in 38 years, one of the biggest lessons is how quickly we can recover, how quickly we can implement and recover. For me, that's been one of the big leadership changes. Now, I have to tell you that the timeliness of what you're doing, the timeliness couldn't be better, because leadership right now, with what we've got going on, Lisa, between a pandemic and civil unrest, I think we as leaders, whether we're in education or whether we own small businesses, we're being watched. What has changed immensely in my 38 years, and it's been immense change, Lisa. I think about 38 years ago when I was interviewing employees, we could get into some banter around your personal life. I could ask you questions about how old you are, whether you were married, and those are off limits today, and should be. I don't have a problem with that being off limit at all. So the public has kind of said to us as leaders, as owners, as educators, there are certain boundaries that we can't cross when it comes to asking personal questions. And yet, what has happened to us as we get out here in today's day and age, it really is about the personal relationships that we have with these people that we are working with, whether it be in organizations or businesses. Things like civil unrest and pandemics, it's viewed very differently from employee to employee, and we have to be sensitive to all of that. So it's made leadership, I think, all the more important. To be an effective leader today, you have to be sensitive to, some people see pandemics one way, some people see it another way. There's not a right way or wrong way to see a pandemic. When it comes to civil issues, there are all kinds of issues and things. So I think it's really been interesting in my 38 years to witness how we have moved from an interview process where I have to stay clear of personal kinds of ideas and questions, and yet today I have to be very sensitive to personal issues. So it's really a juxtaposition, right? It's an odds kind of thing, but it's requiring the very best of leadership today. And I think that for leaders today to be sensitive to their employees, it's more important than ever. I think that we're being looked at. I think people who are seeing our leadership are interested in how we are going to be sensitive to their needs, whether it be health needs or whether it be needs about how they feel about things. So a big change, and that big change is just real recent. And I think we're going to continue to see more and more of that kind of change.
Yeah, listening to you, I hear about like your growth as a leader over those 38 years, and specifically how that's transitioned from growing your own self to growing your people. And then, as you ended there and on talking about, building those personal relationships and being sensitive to the needs that people have, especially in today's world, do you see that as that's due in part to your growth as a leader and understanding what leadership means?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to answer that question quite spot on, but I think I see where you're going, and the growth piece. And here's what my witnessing of effective leadership, what I'm witnessing, Lisa, about really effective leadership is it's an odd combination of ego. Leaders have to be responsible. The buck has to stop at their desk. I think that in really successful operations, successful leadership takes complete responsibility for everything that goes wrong and gives the wins to the people who are working for them. And you have to have that kind of humility. I work very hard in the growth of the people who work for me to have them take ownership. I want them to feel like they are owning things that they're doing. I'm interested, if they are owning, about how they see how they can make things better. If they're doing things, I'm very open, and I encourage them to bring me ideas on systems, processes, how they're doing things. I want them to have a lot of pride in what they're doing. I want them to feel like they're winning all the time. And one of the things that's been very important, and I think it's more important today than really ever, I've never really wanted to position people within my organization to feel like anything they're doing that's difficult, they're doing it alone. I want them to feel like there's partnership in that, whether it be partnership with other people they're working with, or it's my partnership when it comes to the hard things in business. And there's a lot of hard things in all organizations. And yet when there is the success within the things they're doing, I want them to feel like they've been vitally responsible for that success. I've never wanted them to feel like they were vitally responsible for failure. Now, if they can promote within an organization and they can understand how I've led and they get themselves in a leadership role, I hope what they see is that that's part of the gig, is that effective leadership will be, they are now putting themselves in a position of saying to the new people who are coming in and they're empowering, that they want to see them own success, and they'd like to keep them a little distance from a little bit of the failure. Now, we all know as leaders that sometimes when people continue to fail, they've got to own their failures and you've got to help coach them, et cetera. But I'm in the sales business, and in the sales business, it's really important that I have people who feel very confident about what they do and have high self-esteem. Not to get sexist, but I have 7 employees, 6 of them are women. I think being a woman is a very difficult thing in the workplace today, and I think it has been for a long time. I think there's identity issues coming to work about should they be a good mother? Should they be a good wife? Should they be a good worker? What are they owning? And it's really important for me that I build self-esteem and confidence is just as high as I can possibly get it. And if that means I'm going to take a little bit of the failure off their plate and give them the wins, I think that's effective leadership, and it's worked well for me. So it's about developing people. I think to be a really good leader, that kind of weird balance of humility and yet confidence and being proud of what you do, I think you got to strike a really good balance there somewhere.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating to talk to you, who's had decades worth of leadership experience, and to get that perspective. And you talk there about I think kind of allowing your staff to fail and support them in that sometimes, but also when it's appropriate to take some of that away. But you talked earlier about how you've learned from mistakes, and it's about quickly recovering from mistakes, and you've had 38 years worth of learning. So I'm curious, for those who might be listening who are newer in their leadership journey, is it safe to say that, hey, I didn't have it all figured out year one? This has taken 38 years of growth, and also talk about like what, besides just learning from your mistakes, you talked about seeking input from others, but how else have you learned about effective leadership practices?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Because I've thought about what you just said. You think about, as you look back on what you do and the decisions that you've made, and how did you get to those decisions, and how easily did they come to you, and where did you find those resources? I'll tell you what I think happens for me, Lisa, is that, and again, it's from witnessing other people who are effective at this, people who are ineffective. I see leaders who lead from a brain sort of thing. It's tactical. I think the really strong leaders are the ones who lead from the heart. And I think the people who are leading from the heart are the people who love what they're doing.
Mhm.
And to be honest, I think we all are sometimes are tasked with situations that it's hard to lead from the heart because we're doing some things that we don't like doing. I wouldn't suggest that people go out and quit their jobs today. I think there's going to get assignments that you're going to have that, unfortunately, they're going to position you that most of your leadership is going to be around how you think about things. I think when things start coming easy from a decision making in leadership, it's when you can get all in, when you feel like it's a heartfelt kind of thing. For me, I've never had to think too much about leadership decisions when they've been heartfelt decisions. It just seems like it comes pretty natural. It just seems like it's the right thing. And what I think I know is that when you're making heartfelt decisions, even if you're making wrong decisions in a heartfelt sort of way, they often work because I think in the heartfelt kind of drive of this business or organizational things, you know what the end game is. You know where you want to go. The end goal is clear to you. And when you lack heart in it, you really don't know what the end goal is to things. I think back on some things that weren't heartfelt for me. And, I can think specifically of a situation I was involved in where there wasn't much heart in it. And as I think about that particular situation, I'm not sure I had a clear idea about where I wanted to go with it. What was the win? There wasn't a lot of passion about it. Tactically, there was an objective set. We were supposed to hit that objective, but I wasn't even sure why we were supposed to hit that objective. Within my business, we have sales objectives, and I can watch within my organizations some people who sometimes will struggle with certain kinds of sales objectives, and they're good people. They're hardworking. They're trying very, very, very hard. But what you know is that there probably is a bit of heart that's prohibiting them from getting where they want to go. It doesn't make sense what I'm asking them to do. And they're going through the motions. We set up systems and processes and set up objectives, and they're trying to reach objectives. The objectives are always very hard to reach. Objectives get much easier to reach when you feel good about the goal. So in education, I think about what you do educationally. To get a child from the beginning of third grade to the end of third grade, and there are certain kinds of reading objectives around that. If you have a strong belief in the development of a child and you just want that child to be as good as they can be. I've never taught, but I would have to think that kind of objective is so heartfelt that the decision making as a leader that goes along from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year gets to be pretty natural. So, we've all sat through these seminars where people speak like I'm speaking right now, and they're saying, well, what do I do with that? That just seems like, stuff I can't use. What I would encourage people is to read, get inspired, try to find some reasons why you're really in love what you're doing. Your mother is here. She's near me right now. It's often, I got 4 magazines the other day. I'm reading 2 books as we speak. I'm reading, as we talk about getting inspired about a major Fortune 100 company that has a think tank room that they built out of concrete and styrofoam that has no sound in it. And how important it is to get into a room that has no sound, complete quiet. And I think we got to find some quiet moments sometimes as leaders. And we've got to find out what inspires us. And once we find what that is, set that as our goals. We set these goals. And then I think decision-making in leadership gets a lot easier. But I think if you're going through it from a tactical standpoint only, and you got your legal pad out and you're trying to make an outline of things, I think decision-making gets pretty hard day to day. I think it's really hard.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective of leading with heart. I mean, you can tell the difference pretty quickly, I think, with leaders if you're, leading with heart or if you're tactical only. And it's so thoughtful what you just said. And, I want to make sure people hear that message of leading with heart, but also I know that you are very intentional about creating culture within your agency and creating a positive culture. And there's so much that you've talked about already, just as far as, how you work with your staff and how you build them up. I'm curious, outside of what you've already touched on, is there anything else that, you are intentional about when you think about what the culture is in your office building and how you work to get that to where it needs to be.
You know, Lisa, I'm witnessing a couple organizations right now where the culture is just wrong, and cultures in most organizations are not intentional. It's reactive. I think cultures, as I've visited with other State Farm agents and as I've looked at a couple organizations outside of what I'm doing, cultures are the result of employees who come in who have strong opinions. If you get strong-willed and strong people working within your organization, they will develop your culture. Early in my career, I had a very strong-minded, very strong staff person, and you could feel that she was literally building the culture within my organization. And you're right, it became very intentional at that point that I was going to build my culture. I was going to be proactive about my culture. It was important that we always start our days off feeling good about what we're doing, that we are always seeking positive, we're always trying to be positive about things. We're always trying to look at the good. We're looking at silver linings. Once you start thinking about culture and the culture you want to build, little things like wordsmithing is important. Words matter, and how you choose to say words. Little things like working in an office, if you're in leadership and education, or if I'm in leadership and sales, there's a time I have to close my door. I think the world of State Farm, we're a great organization. Sometimes we make mistakes, or at least I think we do. I think sometimes we get some things wrong, and it requires me to take a very strong position on certain things. I don't want the rest of my organization hear me get on a telephone call and be strong-worded and strong-minded with people that I think maybe have done some things that need to be corrected. That's intentional, and it's about culture. I watch other people who will leave that door wide open, and while they listen to them get loud, use words that are inappropriate, and pretty soon you've got a culture of people, people by their nature, they like to grab onto that kind of stuff. It's provocative, to see the employer take a swing at someone above them or a strong partner. It's kind of an invitation of saying, well, there it is. I knew this wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. It's our nature. We tend to look towards the negative. As people, it's hard for us to stay in that positive swing all the time. But as leaders, if we want to develop culture, we are conscious of that. And I think we're careful about how we speak. I think we're careful about how we do things. I think it's everything from how you present yourself at work. There's a way that you come in dressed. There's a way you come in ready. I always get to work before my other people get to work. I try to stay there most days when they leave. So I'm there early and I'm there late. That's leadership. That's a culture. And it is intentional. And you have to think about those sort of things. And there's an organization that I've witnessed here lately, and it has to do around some civil things. And I've witnessed, I don't work within that organization, but in knowing somebody within the organization well, I've witnessed somebody who I think is probably a pretty key person within that organization, who I think historically has done a pretty good job. And that person's bringing in some pretty strong opinion around some civil issues. The person's entitled to their own personal opinion. But you can see organizationally, at least I think from an outsider looking in, it's having an impact on that organization. That culture is being determined in that organization, not by ownership and not by leadership. It's being determined by somebody who works within the organization. And unless you're going to be intentional about that culture, you're going to end up with a changing culture all the time. Who is it today? Who's got the strong words? Who are, the rest of the employees at these organizations, I've got an informal organization within my office. I'm winding down right now. I'm in the fourth quarter. I'm retiring in August. And I've got an informal organization at my office. I have certain people in my office who are more verbal. They have some strong wills, strong personalities. I don't have a bad person within my organization. They're all really good people. But leadership will come natural to certain people, and certain people will rally around certain people with strong personalities, or will have concerns about people with strong personalities, or will stay clear of people with strong personalities, or will learn to say the right things to the people with strong personalities. That's a culture getting determined by people other than me. And what I know is, as I'm winding down my operation, and I'm there a little less, I'm there's probably a bit of an informal culture being built in my office right now, and I'm okay with it. It's all right. They're good people. I'm okay with it. But I know that culture probably is changing a bit. There's a you asked me towards the end. We'll talk a little bit about what I see as an important ingredient around leadership. And so I'll just interject right now. I'll just say something right now. It's so critical, Lisa, in leadership. And I had the great fortune a few years ago to attend a meeting. We call them chairman circle meetings at State Farm, and we bring in some really outstanding outside speakers. And this one person owns a lot of restaurants and has become very successful. And he talked about leadership, and he talked about the people who are near him. And there's one ingredient they all have to have who work near him. He says, there's only one. It's only one thing. It's called self-awareness. And he talked about how important self-awareness is. And as I've observed people and I've observed leadership, I've come to really agree with him on that. It's, as I've told you, I'm watching my culture change a little bit. It's okay as long as I'm self-aware, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we lose self-awareness, it's tough. And as he said, in leadership, some days you have good days, some days you have bad days. It's okay to have a bad day. It's not okay to have a bad day and not be aware of it. If you're having a bad day, there's some things you should be doing. If you're having a good day, there's some things you should be doing. And so self-awareness in leadership is critical. To be self-aware, know a little bit about who you are and how you lead and what's going on. I see some people who are in leadership who have very little self-awareness. They only have one style of leadership, and they may see them as being heroic, or they may see themselves as being strong, but other people may not see them as being heroic or strong. So you need to be self-aware.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think a lot of what you just spoke about just reminds me about what a great responsibility leadership is. But also, that what a great reward, if we're intentional and if we lead with heart and if we're, self-aware. And there's a book I read called Extreme Ownership, and it's talked a lot about what you talked about how, the buck stops with you. And it can be a little bit frightening, to think like that. But at the same time, the reward to see, how you're able to coach people up and the impact you're able to have on, others in your office and even just the community is an incredible reward. And so I feel there's so much that you said that I feel like, I could go down so many different avenues. And I wish my podcast research would have said that, good podcasts are 2 hours long. But I think people only have an attention span of about 20 to 30 minutes. So, my last question is for you is, is there any particular piece of advice you want to leave with leaders, or is there anything we didn't talk about that you feel like it is really important or critical when it comes to leadership for people to be thoughtful about?
Well, I think good leaders like to build. I think you like to build. I like to build, and I think we like to empower people. And for me, being I'm in the fourth quarter and I'm leaving what I'm doing. The wonderful feeling of that we've done some good, but I'd like to think the people that have been around me are better off because they've been around me, and I think I'm better off because they've been around me also. So it's been a two-way street. But I think, Lisa, it's good leadership is about empowering people. I think it's about being a little bit vulnerable, being open, having gratitude, being grateful for some things. At this stage, I have an immense amount of gratitude for the good people who have partnered with me, and I've always looked at it as the people who work with me are partners, and I want to treat them like partners. And I would end this way, that as I worked with the people that I work with, I've often thought when I get into difficult things, if I owned a Dairy Queen and I had a partner in a Dairy Queen, how would I want them to treat me as a partner? So every tough decision, everything that's been hard, anytime I've had to say something, I've tried to turn it around and say, if that was a partner of mine, how would I like it if another partner talked to me that way? or how would I like it if they came to me with that idea? Or how would I be excited about things? And so that's part of my culture, is that in my culture, I want to have people be partners. And so we've tried to partner with each other. And I think a lot of that has to do with also having a lot of respect for each other. That we respect each other, we care about each other. So where we started about leadership and how it's changed today. We really have as leaders a great responsibility, but it brings us a great deal of gratitude, and it makes a difference in our communities and in the places we work. And we've got people who are counting on us, and it's an opportunity for us to make things better for organizations and make people better. So being a leader is a great place. Lisa, we're having a hard time finding leaders, I'll tell you that. So thank you for what you're doing, and I hope that people will want to take the reins and become leaders. I think we've got an awful lot of people today who have grown up and have been a little timid to reach out and want to take on leadership. So it's a wonderful thing to be a leader. So thank you for what you're doing. I'll look forward to watching future podcasts.
Yeah, well, thank you for being on the show. And, I know the impact you've had there locally, but also, just the ripple effect of leadership and how, I think about your impact on me and how that plays out, and I'm sure on even leaders outside of State Farm that you continue to have an impact in leadership. And so I really appreciate you sharing with us this morning and being brave enough to be our first guest. So thanks for being here with us.
Oh, it's been fun. I'll look forward to watching more.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thanks, Dad.
All right. Thanks.